Back in the day when superhero movies weren't stinking up the industry with turds covered in sprinkles, we've had one of the best comic book movies ever made that challenged political ideologies, deconstructed the genre with its own cinematic approach, and ones that delivered on the unimaginable anticipation for all of its fans. Deadpool was one of those movies. A narratively compacted romantic comedy about the Merc with the mouth, cracking jokes, delivered with hilarity and profanity, breaking the fourth wall, poking jabs at 20th Century Fox's mismanagement and business modules, the X-Men franchise, even Ryan Reynolds' previous superhero flop, Green Lantern, all the while slicing and shooting up supervillains and henchmen, just so he can rescue the love of his life. It was a critical smash, and at the time was the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. And you know what? None of it could have been done without Ryan Reynolds' involvement. Pushing for this project to become a possibility and giving us one of the greatest comic book character portrayals in recent memory. Right after Tom Rothman and 20th Century Fox committed one of the worst decisions in the comic book medium. Deadpool 2 was a bit of a disappointment from the original, though I thought it was a pretty solid movie from what I remembered it to be, featuring a bunch of the Deadpool goodness that we've all come to expect. Now, it's been 6 years since the previous Deadpool flick, and boy, do we need one more than ever. We've been swamped with MCU mundanity from Phase 4 and 5, with multiverse monstrosities that aren't No Way Home, and sequels and television shows that have done significant damage to this billion-dollar company. So it would be a great change of pace to get us yet another standalone Deadpool movie that is not connected to any cinematic universe whatsoever that would change things up in this superhero genre. Well, shoot. I guess Deadpool's now a part of the MCU, as well as another character that shares the spotlight with the movie we're reviewing right now. And that, of course, is Logan, aka Wolverine. And guess who's coming back to reprise his role? Yeah, Hugh Jackman. The last time we saw him as Wolverine, he retired his character in one of the greatest portrayals that we have ever seen as Logan in one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, giving us a bittersweet conclusion to his character. It was also a shame because one of the biggest wishes from fans was wondering what it would be like to have Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool in a superhero crossover of the ages. And so, with hearing the cry of the fans, the MCU has finally filmed and produced Deadpool and Wolverine. Like the original Deadpool, the impossible has become possible. But as a movie, as a whole, it could have been so much better. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty disappointing. Sure, it's entertaining for what it's worth. The action scenes are a ton of fun, and the cast is such a welcome delight at times. The problem is that the story delves into the multiverse. And we all know how well multiverse movies end up in the MCU. With that being said, everyone, spoilers ahead. You have been warned. Years after Deadpool 2, Wade Wilson is taking a little break from being Deadpool and is celebrating his birthday with all of his friends. Everything sounds like something that you would expect from a Deadpool movie until the TVA show up and abduct him for what Deadpool thinks is all because he used Cable's time machine to save his girlfriend Vanessa, to save Peter from the X-Force, even shooting Ryan Reynolds in the back of the head for reading the script of Green Lantern, which was so freaking funny. However, the TVA in their tyrannical ways aren't going to put him on trial for disrupting the sacred timeline and incarcerating him into the void. You see, a TVA agent named Mr. Paradox is informing Deadpool that he is a very special individual to be taken on a task like this. He needs to save his universe from being deteriorated because Logan, from Logan, is dead. He is considered to be the anchor being of Deadpool's universe. If the anchor being, a character who is known for their sole existence to carry the universe together, is dead, the universe will fizzle in a matter of years. So, if we were to apply logic to that, wouldn't Tony's sacrifice at the end of Endgame cause his universe's demise? Doesn't that kind of contradict the idea of incursions in Multiverse of Madness, where if someone from another universe is interacting with another universe, then both universes will eventually perish? Doesn't this also kind of cheapen Logan's sacrifice at the end of his own movie? I guess if he didn't decide to save the children at the end of Logan, then his universe wouldn't die. God, the TVA ruined everything. However, instead of waiting for hours for Deadpool's world to vanish, Mr. Paradox, because he's evil, decides to create a device known as the Time Ripper that would eradicate his universe immediately. So Deadpool travels throughout the multiverse to get a Wolverine to help bring his universe together, only to find out that the TVA has stated that this is the worst Wolverine, one that has left his entire team down, leaving them to be killed by certain enemies. The two end up getting pruned to the void, and so it is up for Deadpool and Wolverine to work together to make it back to their universe and stop Mr. Paradox from activating his device, all the while meeting different cameos and characters from Marvel and Fox's past. If I were to start off charitably, it feels so gosh darn good to see Ryan Reynolds back as the smart aleck anti-hero again. He still manages to capture the essence of who Deadpool is and why he is such a wisecracking hitman with a heart of gold. Everything down to his mannerisms, his comedic timing whenever he is trying to crack a joke or a reference, and his line delivery that he's been executing so well since 2016. But there's kind of this one thing that I really don't like about Deadpool in this movie, and it kind of damages his character. It's that he wants to find purpose in his life, and he wants to do something that matters. And he is so distraught by being rejected by Happy Hogan and the MCU Avengers that he lost his entire purpose of trying to matter, to the point of him quitting Deadpool for 6 years to be a car salesman and splitting up with Vanessa. Yeah, I don't buy the fact that Wade Wilson would just quit and lose all meaning after being rejected by a team of a different universe. I mean, doesn't Deadpool have friends and family worth fighting for? Doesn't he have other allies that are willing to help him out, like Cable and Domino? Heck, he even formed his own superhero team called X-Force. And by the way, why would Wade even care if he couldn't get accepted? He couldn't even be a part of the X-Men, nor did he want to. Well, I guess him getting denied by the Avengers is enough to make him quit, so yeah, wasn't a fan of that writing decision. Then, there's his co-star. Admittedly, it feels pretty awkward that Hugh Jackman has reprised his role as Wolverine, especially after he retired his role in Logan, because, let's face it, after the ending of Logan, it was done. It was over. Logan's character arc was complete, and the ending and resolution to him was unforgettably powerful. So seeing him in this movie while watching the trailers, it honestly felt like Disney and Marvel's desperation attempt to bring the X-Men into the MCU as fast as they can, and to dig up graves of certain characters that have already made their mark towards fans. As much as I don't like the fact that he's being used to cross over to other blockbuster IPs when his story is finished, even while acknowledging that this Wolverine is from a different universe, Hugh Jackman is still flawless as Logan/Wolverine, just like the old days. On an acting standpoint, his ability to convey and capture the callous, frustrated, and sympathetic aspect of his character is second to none, especially when he delivers a verbal beatdown to Deadpool in the second act of the movie, showing us that Jackman still got it. And once he unsheathes those claws and goes berserker mode towards an enemy, it's a pleasure to witness. However, this movie doesn't do a good job at convincing you that this is the worst of all the Wolverines. In fact, once you hear his backstory as to why he is that way, he honestly isn't much different than the Wolverine that we've seen since the original X-Men. What makes this Wolverine beyond any kind of redemption, like an X-24 from Logan, a bloodthirsty maniac with no moral compass, or a Wolverine that bends to the knee of Magneto? How is this version the worst of the worst? Even his entire character arc resolves in a seconds-long conversation with another person that he doesn't know or have any context of, and it tries to go for the same approach that No Way Home did, except it is executed without any kind of depth, and it fails to illustrate what we know about Logan as a character, and why he is this hero that we all admire in the past. Even if the characters aren't given the greatest of treatments, the on-screen chemistry between Reynolds and Jackman is really good. Their back and forth chemistry is a delight, and their line delivery with all the banter that they can spew at each other is so on point that it will keep you laughing and chuckling as the film progresses. It's a shame that the duo's star power can't overcome such a poorly written script. Characterizations aside, the movie's screenplay is a mess and a half. In every corner the film puts itself in, there is never a convenience to save our characters from an impossible situation. It doesn't help the fact that the main catalyst of the movie being the main villain's motivations, or should I say villains, one of whom is being played by Emma Corrin, who plays Charles Xavier's twin sister, Cassandra Nova, who's pretty solid here, are written with such little effort that you can find their motivations inside of a raffle of any cliched villain scheme done in Hollywood. Well, on an entertainment standpoint, can this movie get away with its violence and its comedic brains, just like the first two Deadpool movies? The answer is both yes and no. As far as violence goes, the film has a handful of well-choreographed, blood-drenching action set pieces, such as Wolverine and Deadpool having two one-on-one scuffles, one in the Void Wasteland, and the other is a creative brawl inside of a Honda Odyssey, where they use the environment and the gadgets of the car to their advantage. And in the finale, there is this action scene that is heavily and obviously inspired by Oldboy, in which the camera pans in a dolly shot, or a tracking shot, and it moves all across the screen as our heroes are pummeling bad guy after bad guy, and it all makes up for an immensely choreographed and satisfying experience just as a scene alone. And you know what? When Deadpool is killing TVA agents in the opening action set piece, it felt so freaking good to see the TVA agents get brutally murdered by Deadpool. But this also honestly leads up to one of my other issues of this movie. On the comedy side of the coin, the movie is not nearly as funny as Deadpool 2, and it's miles away from being as funny as Deadpool 1. There are some jokes that at least got a chuckle out of me, and I do admire a jab at Disney and Marvel every now and then. But aside from that, a lot of Deadpool's humor is very toned down and juvenile compared to the previous Deadpool movies, a majority of which were clever, quick-witted, and wasn't afraid to poke fun at itself. There's also something that this movie does a lot in this film, and that is called lamp shading. Lamp shading is where you draw attention to a flaw in the world building or story, whether it be something illogical or a straight up contrivance, and then pretend as it's no big deal or make a joke about it while moving on to the next scene. Deadpool and Wolverine do a ton of lamp shading, especially when it tries to make fun of Disney's business modules and the current state of the MCU. For example, this movie has Deadpool pointing out that the MCU has released one mess after another, or how a certain mechanic from the TVA or the multiverse doesn't make any sense. But the majority of them, aside from a handful of jokes, feel so corporate and manufactured by committee, as if Disney and Marvel are acting like they've actually learned something from their previous outings. Here's the truth. They've learned nothing. Oh, they may point out something that is perceived to be terrible by a lot of people, including myself. However, they are still repeating the same issues that have been done before. And with this movie succeeding at the box office, they're going to act like they've made some sort of an accomplishment when they're still moving just a couple steps back, just when they think they made one step forward. If you want a much more raunchy, hilarious experience that involves the Merc with the mouth, your best option is to watch the first two Deadpool movies. As for an excellent Wolverine movie, do I even need to say more? For Deadpool and Wolverine, it was sorely disappointing. A manufactured, cynical product that is fourth wall breaking and vulgar, yet it pulls its punches. A film that pokes fun at itself while ignoring that it's regurgitating those issues again and again. A love letter that panders with cameos and references rather than paying respect. It's a shame that we've had a much better example of how to write a multiverse story while paying respect to the different eras of live action superheroes and we haven't even come close to it after 3 years. If you want to simply want to see Deadpool and Wolverine bounce off one another while performing bloody violence on enemies, even each other, then you know what? You will honestly get a kick out of it. But as a movie, as a whole, I think you have better options. I'm God's perfect idiot, and you, my friends, have been blown away.